and welcome to Time to Process. This is Marietta. I always still want to call you by your maiden name, though, even though I know that that's not what it is. Her married name now is Paxton, right?
Yes, and you said it right because most people miss the S, but you don't.
Yeah, no, well, yes, because I think when I see it like spelled out.
Yes.
But I always want to call you Marietta Malner.
Yes.
Like even in my phone, sometimes I put you as that. I don't know why. I'm so weird.
But I think it's great.
So Marietta is a good longtime friend since high school. But also you've been my client for a lot of years now.
It has.
It's been a lot of years.
A long time
you say that, it's probably been like 8 years.
It's been a long time. I remember switching over to you. So it wasn't like we've done this since high school.
No, not that long for sure. Were you pregnant with the twins? Maybe.
No, I think it was just after the twins. Maybe.
Okay, maybe after the twins.
I came to you and like we were saying, oh yeah, we each have twins.
Oh,
but I
think
my twins were little, and they just turned 9 in July.
Gosh, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a while for sure. I love it. So that's how I know her. I mean, you hung out with my really good friend Callie growing up. That was like in my neighborhood. And I feel like that's probably how we met.
Yeah, because you're older than me.
Yep.
In school. But
a year or two older.
What year did you graduate?
2002.
Yeah, so just 1 year.
So just 1 year.
Yeah, I graduated in 2003. And yeah, Callie would rave about you. I mean, in high school, I was like, oh, Courtney, she's so great. And you were always nice, so beautiful, funny. Like just all the things, sweet, right? So
sweet. Yes.
Yeah, I think.
I love that because I don't know if I've seen you since then. I ran into her in St. George.
Oh, just
did I tell you? Yeah, no. Literally at the gas station.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just getting
a
soda.
Gas
I know. Yes, that Dutchman.
She loves it.
I just like walk in. I was like, hey.
Oh, how fun.
I know. Okay, she's one I need to have on the podcast too. She's a riot, but that would be so fun. So anyway, so that is Marietta. That's how I know her. And you are an absolute gem. I feel the same way about you. Okay, but tell us a little bit about yourself because guys, she's freaking cool. You're wicked smart.
Okay, so a little bit about my story. I got my master's in marriage and family therapy. And then soon after that, I got married, started having babies. I have 4 total. So I have my oldest is 11 and then my 9-year-old twins. And then I have a 5-year-old. So when my twins were little, I kind of put the therapy stuff on the back burner. And I did baby sleep training. I became a baby sleep consultant because my twins didn't sleep and I was going to lose my mind.
Figure it out.
Yeah. And I just kept looking for something that was affordable, that like just laid things out really clearly. And I couldn't find that. I either found the super expensive consultants, which I get it, like working one-on-one with someone like that.
But that's a lot of times where they like come into your house, right?
Yeah, they can come into your house. I did a lot of virtual stuff. Like it's just expensive and that's fine. Yeah. And a lot of people love that and need that and it's great.
Yeah.
Or there was the, buy my book for $15, $20, whatever, $30. And that's more affordable, but it's a book.
You can't ask questions.
Hundreds of pages to read and digest while I am sleep deprived and literally dying. So I was a little bit disappointed with my options. I ended up doing a ton of research and just starting my own company. It's called Little Dreamers. And my biggest thing that I'm proud of is my do-it-yourself sleep guides that are so short, so concise, to the point. Yeah. They're affordable. And I just feel like it's more easy for sleep deprived parents to digest and to know what to do because they're age specific. So you're not
getting
those ones
you did videos on? Like, so it's
those ones are just
you do read readable, but they're short, short and concise.
Yes. And then the video, I did a newborn course. So that's
right.
Newborns are the best and also
I know,
the trickiest when it comes to sleep.
I know.
I mean, just depending on, like, sometimes families have it, they can figure out their groove and they're good, but sometimes you need a little bit of help. And so
but a lot of times
I think
newborn
course is video.
Because they get their days and nights mixed up. Where they're sleeping during the day and then they're awake all night. And you're like, yeah, that's not how it works.
Yeah, or
so that's really,
so
really
there's
hard.
A lot of like just little things to kind of figure out with newborns. I don't sleep train newborns, but I think some consultants call it like sleep shaping or like whatever. Like
sure,
you can still influence it and you can help make it like to a more sustainable level, and always obviously just depend on where the family is. So yeah, really proud of that. And And it's still up and running. I have a sleep consultant actually that does most of the consulting now because a few years ago, I got back into the therapy world. I opened my own private practice and now I get
this
to,
is where we get to the good
this
stuff.
is, I mean, I love the sleep consulting for sure. And at that phase in my life, that was exactly what I needed. I love helping moms. And now I just get to help. A lot of my clients are moms still. Yeah. And so I get to help them just in more areas, more than just sleep. Sure. And with the really like, I don't know, I just love the really raw, real like stuff. I don't know. That's my favorite stuff. So like I always say I have the best job, but maybe I just have the best job for me. I don't know. I really, really love it. So.
Yeah, but that's amazing because there are so many people that don't feel like they have the best job. You know?
Yeah.
I feel like I have the best job and people keep asking like, how's podcasting going? I'm like, it's so fun.
Yeah.
I feel like we're having like a play date right now.
Right.
Like it's like, how many times do you get to like be like, hey, just come over and hang out with me?
Chat.
Yeah.
No.
It's so fun.
And it's like your job anyways, but without
doing the hair.
Part, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you do have
and
a really
like,
good
I'm
job.
not doing this. Yeah, I'm just sitting.
And we've talked about that before. Like you are, and people always talk about like hairstylists or their
own therapists.
Like, the stuff that comes out, the time that you have to sit there. I mean, they sit in your chair longer than they sit in my chair when they come to my office.
Oh yeah. So
there's a lot that comes up. And,
well, I think a lot of times you don't sit at any place for that kind of amount of time.
Right.
And I typically like have people in and out in 2 hours.
Yeah.
And even that is like longer
that's
than
a long
what
time
most of them.
Sit
So
and chat,
interesting. Okay, so that is about Marietta. I have lots of questions to get to with her because I do want to like kind of guide it in a certain way because I actually just had the thought too about the new, not new, but the way that you do therapy, that new, it's not, can't remember what it's called. It's not EMDR. It's something along those lines.
Yeah, EMDR is really trendy right now. You'll probably have heard of that.
Hear that a lot.
The modality that I use is called lifespan integration, and it's not similar to EMDR. It's not like you would ever be in a session and be confused which modality you're doing.
Yes.
But it is helpful like EMDR. That makes sense.
Yes.
It's a trauma modality and there's a few out there.
Yeah. Just the way that you described it when you started like talking about it and when you're doing it, I was like, that sounds amazing. So I do want you to explain that here in just a second. So, okay, quick life update because I actually don't think I did one in the last 2 episodes. I think because I was just like excited, getting ready to go. So I'm like, I've got to remember this. Yes. But my Dylan turned 16 on Sunday.
It's crazy.
Wild. And actually my oldest son also got engaged over the weekend. Okay. So we had a huge weekend. It was crazy. I know. Very exciting on both counts. Dylan is chomping at the bit though to get his license.
Good.
Yes, but Sunday was his birthday. Monday was Columbus Day.
He couldn't
go.
Columbus?
Yes. No. And then yesterday they had their last like sophomore and JV games for football.
So you're so busy.
And so we like couldn't go. Anyway, we're supposed to go today after school.
I'm hoping for the best. Is gonna get it. I was talking recently to friends about kids not getting their license, and we were kind of like speculating like why that's a thing.
Why?
Okay, do you want to hear my idea?
Yes, I want to hear.
I mean, I know nothing, but this is
but somebody just said this to me yesterday. A client, I was doing her hair, and she's like, "I can't believe he's excited." I'm like, "I can't get him to shut up about it." Like he's like getting frustrated. I'm like, "Your birthday was on a Sunday, and then the next day was a holiday." I'm like, "I'm not trying to keep you from this." Like, this is just life.
Yes. Right.
Okay, so let's hear.
Okay, so here's my theory. So I was listening, it comes from podcasts. I was listening to podcasts, right?
Yep.
And I did that just the way that we parent.
Okay.
Like we parent, not the way we were parented. If you think about like us growing up, I mean, I was outside all day long.
24/7.
Had no idea where I was really.
Yeah.
My mom literally rang a bell to come in for dinner. Like that's how she communicated, right?
We just heard our name all the way down the street.
Mom's yelling, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And she's
bell though. That's really smart.
She for sure had the cowbell or whatever. And I mean, I'm not saying that kids aren't outside playing and we know where they are every second.
It's just different than it used to be. For sure.
Protect our kids more than we used to. And
absolutely.
There's a million reasons why. One of the reasons that this podcast gave was just, social media and news and how scary things get spread more.
Yes.
Right. So we're more aware of them and that possibility. Yeah. And so they're they're saying that we don't allow our kids to take risks as much. So the example in the podcast actually was a mom who lives in New York.
Okay.
And her 9-year-old son wanted to get dropped off somewhere and take the subway home by himself. Like he wanted to navigate that by himself, right?
That feels terrifying.
9.5. I don't know, right?
Yes.
And I think part of it is terrifying because we don't live in New York.
Sure.
So I don't know the subway. I don't know anything. Like he did live there. He did use it all the time.
And I have lived in New York and I have taken the subway and I was like 19 at the time and it still felt scary.
Yes. But and there's a part that feels scary because it's just complex and it's a lot to digest, right?
Yes.
But this mom did it and he's fine. He made it home, everyone. Like he's alive. Anyways, and I don't know how how people heard about it. I don't know if she had a blog or if I don't know.
Maybe like on social media or something.
Whatever. But it kind of blew up and people were very polarized on it. Like that is
like up in arms,
calling her out like that's abuse.
Oh my gosh.
Child,
what?
Like that was awful of you. And then other people being like, good for you. Like good for you for him deciding that he wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And then
figuring it out.
Him,
yep.
Right?
For sure.
And so I think that there's a lot of coddling with our kids. Mm-hmm. Like we, even if our kids want to do something, like we don't want them to do it because we're afraid of what could happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing. If you don't figure out how to do that when you're young.
Yep. You'll never do it when you're old.
You'll never do it when you're old.
Yes.
Your whole life is going to be uncomfortable because you don't know how to face something that's scary and prove to yourself that you can overcome it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So I listen to this and I'm like, okay, kids, choose something that you've never done before and you need to go do it. Right? And I have these big ideas in my mind and they're like, eat cookies for dinner. And I'm like, okay, that is not what I meant. Like, we're not.
Girl, does that scare you? I mean, I guess it does scare me a little, but
Right. But as I was thinking about this in relation to being like 16 and getting your license, I'm like, whoa, driving is scary. Having that responsibility is scary. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't had experience doing new things on your own, you don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. And I don't know that kids have the ability to connect that. I mean, there's things in my life that I'm like, that happened to me when I was younger that I can't connect how it's affecting me as an adult.
Sure.
So I don't think we should expect our kids to make that connection.
Sure.
But I did, it really stopped me and I was like, that resonates. Like that feels true.
I 100% agree with that. And I do feel like even though there are often times where there are things that I'm like, I feel uncomfortable with that. Because I look back at the things I did as a child and I'm like, I would never let my kids do that these days.
Right.
But also there are more crazies out there. We know
like
more.
There's more crazies, but actually
you're right. It may not
be.
The
numbers, that's what this podcast was saying. It's actually safer now than it was when we were growing up.
Oh my
gosh. But the perception is we're just opposite. More aware of the crazies that are out there.
Which I do agree with that because now I feel like with social media, texting, all the things, it's anytime anything happens. If there's a hoax for a school shooting or anything like that, my kids know before I do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa. I can't even control that narrative for my kids anymore.
Right.
But you're 100% spot on because even though now they get their learners at 15. So as soon as they get it for a whole year before, which I don't remember ours, but sure it wasn't a year. Was it only 6 months maybe?
It was 6 months. Yeah.
So and again, I can rationalize this however I want because you are calling me out a little bit here because this is the thing. So his birthday is in October. Obviously, he just turned 16 on Sunday. Well, last October, it snowed right away. We had such a very a wet, October, November, December. And so it was I didn't feel like we could teach him how to drive right from the get-go. It was snowing every day. Yes.
Because you want to learn the basics before you
go right into snow.
Yeah.
And really, again, we had one of our worst winters last year. Yeah. And so between that, he probably didn't really start driving until February or March.
Yeah.
Well, then his birthday's October. So he drove all summer, but what's been really holding me back and absolutely terrifying is the freeway.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you guys. Yeah. It is terrifying. Yeah. I feel like even driving around town, I am holding on to the bar. Plus my foot is squished into the ground. I'm ooh, I am so tense the entire time that sometimes I'll get out of the car and I'm I have to kind of shake it off. I'm I think I'm going to be sore tomorrow because I my adrenaline is. And he really is
And
not
that's
a bad
I
driver.
feel like it's
It's
a normal experience.
Yes, but it's like to take, and granted, I drive a Suburban.
Yeah.
So he's been learning on a Suburban. On a big car, which I'm like, but him just in the flow of traffic on the freeway. Anyway, it's been a lot. It has been a lot. So we've got him a car, like a sedan. And I am absolutely terrified for him to just like, here you go. Yeah. Again, around town, no big deal. Yeah. Like I'm totally confident in that. But like to go on the freeway, I'm like, oh my gosh, please. And it's not that I even think that he is a bad driver. No. It's just that like I feel
you
like
just know that things can happen.
Well, and when we were young, there was not nearly the amount of cars on the freeway. So I felt like I just went on the freeway and it was no big deal. Now I'm like, it's like rush hour all day long.
Feels like, yeah.
Yeah,
you're true.
Anyway, so you're 100% right. I'm totally coddling my kid in that. Where to him, he's like, I know, but I have to learn. I'm like, I know you do. But it's scary, okay? Like, because I don't want you to crash my car. I don't want you to hurt somebody else. Like,
yes. And I do think there's like still age appropriate. Like, I don't know, like but like we live very close to a grocery store.
Yes.
And I'm like, I could send my 11-year-old with some cash.
Totally.
To walk to the grocery store, buy me something I need for dinner, and come home. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
But he has to cross a really busy street to do that, right? So it's like, it's easier for me to just be like, no, I'll just drive.
Yeah.
So I have done that. I've driven and I've like sent them, but that's like, so it sounds so silly, like talking about like, seriously, I have anxiety about sending my kid into the grocery store. Like,
well, my concern is that they're not going to have enough money and they're going to be standing there like, oh, well, crap, what do I do? But so I have also done the same. And it did take me a little bit of time to like,
get used to
it. I'm just going to let them do it and they've got to figure it out. And there's ample enough cash or whatever. Or like, here's my card. Remember my number, my PIN number, type thing. But then also it's like, you have a phone now. Like there is so many things that I'm like, you can call me if there's an issue inside.
You think about us as kids, like we didn't have phones and we did run into these problems.
Yep. Exactly.
And like problem solving and thinking on your toes, like those are really good skills to have. And actually, when I sent my kids in, it was to get orange juice. I remember they come back out without orange juice. And I'm like, what happened? Well, Mom, what kind did you want? Did you want the one that's, pulp or high pulp or I don't know. And I was like, oh, I thought you guys knew what we buy.
Yes,
totally. I love pulp. Get me the high pulp.
Get me oh my gosh.
Anyways, and then they're like, see, I told you.
Yes. And then they like went back inside. Okay.
Yeah.
You're right. 100%. That is, I feel like I am 50-50 on that. I feel like for the most part, I'm pretty like raised independent kids, do this on your own type of people. But I agree.
But we
I'm
still
also
have
very
to
cautious.
Manage.
Yes. Because we have a very, very busy road that we've just barely started letting my twins cross and they're 12.
Yeah.
And I think it's also though, because like even when Dylan, who's my 16-year-old, he would ride his scooter across it all the time. And there were often times where I would have neighbors be like, I saw Dylan almost get hit. Because I'm like, it's not necessarily him not following the rules of like waiting to the crosswalk. It's the cars not paying attention. And that's where I feel like I'm like, I trust my kid. I don't know if I trust other people.
Yeah. Oh, for
sure. And that is where I think that it comes into play.
Right. It gets hard, right? Because And I also think it's a piece of like kids. Like, what do you want to do? What do you feel like you can do? And even though it might be scary, like, I think if you start that young and they get used to it, like, they want to grow. They want to learn new things. Like, that is inherent in you. And then I think it's, so I don't know. I think it's just nurturing that and, like, giving them that opportunity, like, within reason, right? Like,
yes.
There are some things that for sure. I remember one time my son got in trouble and he had to ride his bike to soccer practice.
Oh, yes.
And we live up by Harmon's in Orem, if anyone knows where this is. And he had to ride it all the way over to the rec center in Orem, which is,
oh my gosh,
it's pretty far.
Yeah.
Right? And I am like, my husband, like, we didn't tell him, but we were like driving around town, like making sure we could see.
That's what I was just going to say. I was like, I more so, because I'm like, I don't know if they would be able to get there. But I'm like, he's probably watched you in the car a billion times.
Yes, so he knew where to go, and he, but and again, it was a little bit of a punishment, consequence, whatever. So I actually was driving my daughter to the same place.
Oh, okay.
He just did not earn his ride that morning. So I did. I like took my daughter. So we all left at the same time. And I took my daughter and I come back and I'm like, okay, this is where he is. And then my husband follows him the rest of the way.
Yes.
And like, it was fine. He did great.
Yeah,
and
totally. Well, and that's where like so speaking of like, the scooter and stuff, we like during the summer and even before, I mean, Dylan had a job basically as soon as he turned 14. He really wanted that. So he helped figure it out. Okay, what place is higher at 14? And he had to ride a scooter because I was like, I can't take you and pick you up from every single time. Right. Yeah. Like, I know you want to work and I'm encouraging that, but you have to kind of figure out your own way to get there.
Like, again, the problem solving, right?
Yes.
Like, what's the problem? How am I going to do this and figuring it out and having the ambition, motivation, and confidence to tackle something that is scary and that they don't know how to do. So.
Yeah, for sure. See, that's all good things.
Yes.
We're going to get into all of this. Okay, let's get to my favorite things. Okay. So this week, and if you've been following my Instagram for the last few weeks, I went to that favorite things party with my high school girlfriends. Did you see that?
Yes.
And I had shown just a picture of a face cream I had gotten. Like, I just took a picture and I was like, I'll use it for a couple weeks. Oh my gosh, you guys. Within like 3 days, I was like,
this is good.
This is so good. And Haley talked about it when she was here, Haley Jones, who was Haley Smith originally. She's a year older than me. So I don't know if you remember her from high school. Okay, so, and I actually mentioned this in Elisa's podcast as well, the one that's currently out this week. But Nivea is typically not like a high-end brand, right?
Yeah.
But this is Nivea cream from Europe.
Oh.
So it has all the good stuff in it.
Yeah.
Because it's a European brand and it's so much more regulated there.
Yes.
And it is thick, like, I don't even know how to explain it. It is almost like hard to smooth out because it's so thick.
Oh, I love it.
Like, it's
so is it a
white
night cream?
It's literally just a cream. Like, it comes in a tin.
But do you put it on at night or do you wear it?
Yeah. I think you can do it anytime. I do it at night just so that I can like let it. I mean, it's like you put on a thick sunscreen. It's white when you put it on. So then by the time in the morning, it's like soaked in.
Oh.
It's that thick.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
So good. And like, you have to be careful because you can't like, in fact, when I do it, I've gotten it where I'm like, I keep getting greasy in my hair right here because I'm like trying to like go up like this. Like, it's totally in my hair, but it is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Like, I feel like even when I go to the gym in the morning, because I obviously haven't like rinsed it off or anything. Yeah. My face is glowing.
Oh, really?
It's that good.
Okay.
But it's interesting because when you look at it, it's a tin, like an old school tin.
Yeah.
And it doesn't like twist on or anything. It's just like just plop the lid on top to kind of a tin. But it's phenomenal. It's so
I'm gonna have to look for the link on your Instagram.
Yeah, so I'll put the link on there because you can buy it through Instagram, or not through Instagram, through Amazon. But I'm not sure if they're shipping it from Europe or like how that's working, but it is the European one.
That's what I like.
Yes, and it has like different things on it, like it's showing that, and then I don't even know what language it's in, but it is in a different language.
It's so cool.
So anyway, it is so good. And again, that's why we have a favorite thing party, right? Because we can, get all this new stuff. Yes. Share the wealth, share the wealth. Okay. This is one too that I got thinking about because all summer, my daughter's hair is finally like long enough to really be doing more with. We had her hair short, like in a bob for years because she played with it, as is I play with mine. But she was like breaking off the top of her hair. Yeah. And so it was like such short layers. Anyway, so we did a bob to kind of get everything back. So she's been growing it out for the last few years, 2 or 3 years. And it's a good length. I mean, it's probably like right here if you're watching the video. But anyway, so we're finally buying like little elastics and stuff. We haven't for years. I found a package on Amazon of 1,500 elastics. And I feel like a lot of times those clear ones, you like try to put them in and it just breaks. Yeah. These ones are phenomenal. Oh, they're so good. So I am doing like bubble braids with them. I've put them like in my own hair. And I don't know. I just feel like they're one, like, it sounds such a silly thing to not be able to find a good one of that.
No, but I have gone through a lot. It's just random. Like you buy some and it's like, okay,
these ones are good. These ones are not.
Different ones.
Exactly. Right? So, and I actually got the Goody brand ones, like the GOODY, and they, I feel like, were almost more damaging. They have
to
like
the hair.
Yes. They almost have like these little ridges in them that I think is supposed to hold the hair tighter. But to me, it felt like it was pulling the hair enough that it was breaking.
So what brand I have. I don't even know what we have, but is the big one. We've had it for years.
Yeah, because you're like, yeah, you can't run out because because like, what do you do for her hair for soccer? Do you do anything or just a ponytail?
I don't have it. Yeah, sometimes I'll do something cute.
Okay. Yeah,
but lots of times she's at that age where she's starting to like, oh, I know how to put my hair back in the ponytail now, so she'll put it back. And I have some hair bands that are, thicker, bigger, whatever that I like.
Totally.
Just use those ones.
And so that's where we'll do a thick, like the regular hair bands for the ponytail, and then for her, like for the actual ponytail itself, I do the bubble braids. Because then we usually will put a bow at the end for softball.
Yeah, cute.
Anyway. Because then it's not, because if it's like at the nape of her neck and like right on the ponytail, she can't put she's a catcher. Mm-hmm. She can't put her catcher's helmet on. Oh, the helmet. Because it hits it like right there. Like the batting helmet's a little different than her catching one. So anyway, so they're really, really good. And same, I feel like I've gone through now just in the last year. This is probably like the third or fourth set of them that I've bought. And I'm like, okay, these ones are good. These are the ones. These are really, really good. You find the ones,
and then you just pray they never get.
I know. They
never go away. Because that's the worst.
There's nothing worse than that. There's been 7 things since I've started the podcast that have already been discontinued. Yeah, I'm like, what the heck?
You go back in to like rebuy it, right?
Yes.
And it's all saved on there, which is so nice.
100%, but it's not there.
It's not there.
Yeah, I know. It's so annoying. So annoying. Okay, so this is another one all of these every single week, people are probably like, that's like so random. I'm like, I know, but it's just like things throughout my day that I think like, oh, this is fantastic. Yeah. Pre-cut parchment paper.
Oh, yeah.
Do you do that for when you do like a one tray recipe or whatever?
Because I just have always bought it from Costco, like the big ones that you just like do.
So you just like rip
But I've
off?
seen a lot of people doing the pre-cut ones that you can just pull out. And apparently it's life-changing.
It's life-changing. This is the other thing. Because have you ever bought the mats that you can put inside of those? And they're so annoying to wash.
Yeah, the like silicone mats, right?
Yes. Yeah. I actually hate them so much. And so I'm like, I would rather just do the parchment paper, but I also have used it for, besides just putting like in a pan to do like a, one sheet, whatever, or cookies or biscuits or any of that. Sometimes so I feel like I love to host. So between like bunko and book club or baby showers or whatever, I like to use platters that maybe are unusual. Like they're not exactly a platter. Mm-hmm. So I was supposed to help with a baby shower yesterday, wasn't able to. So I sent everything with my mom. Luckily she was able to set it up, but they wanted an additional charcuterie board to like put stuff on. Yeah. And I have a chalkboard that kind of looks like a charcuterie, like it has a handle. So not a charcuterie board, but looked like a breadboard. Yeah. Right. Where it has the handle on it, but it is actually a chalkboard. So I do that a lot of times, and I put a piece of parchment paper down first. Yeah. So then you can use something that's not food safe, but make it food safe. Yeah. Exactly. So I've done that a lot where as long as there's not like a juice or something, then you could put it on lots of different things, that if it's like not going to ruin it. Right. Anyway, so I was thinking about that and like how I was going to do it. I'm like, oh, I'll send up a parchment paper like over the weekend. And I was like, that's what I'm going to put on my list because it's so good. Yes. Yeah. And I just do the Reynolds brand. I think it's $4 for a box of like, I don't even know. Maybe there's only like 12, but I feel like there's more like 20 in there. Because I feel like it lasts me like a while. Yeah. I mean, not that I cook that much and using like a parchment paper, but yeah, I love it. So anyway, that's a really good one. Okay. This is one that every time I say it, my husband is like, sounds like you're speaking a different language. But speaking of sports, because our kids both play sports, and I don't know if you deal with a lot of grass stains.
I mean, who doesn't?
Exactly. Feld's naphtha.
That's soap. Like a different language.
I know.
Like, I don't know this.
So this is a soap that is I think the original brand is Purex, but it's been around forever. I want to say since like the 20s. Mm-hmm. It's literally been around for 100 years. But it's a bar of soap that I don't even know what's in it. It is just magic.
I wonder.
But
I have seen this before.
It literally just It's a bar of soap.
Yeah, because I had one of those.
It's green and white.
I have no idea.
And what I a lot of times do, and I'll like do a video of this, is I will just take off half of the packaging.
Yeah.
So I can hold it still.
Yeah.
And then you get the areas wet, just like a spray bottle, and then you just scrub it on it. But the other thing you can do is that you can grate it into your laundry.
Oh, that's nice.
And that I feel like has made a huge difference.
Will clean all of it.
Yeah, and I've talked on here too about using the Shout spray as well, and I'm obsessed with that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like, if you cannot get something out, this is like a game changer. I know. It's amazing. And there's a lot of times too where if I just feel like, oh, that laundry is just so dirty, it just needs a little
needs more,
then I will grate it in there. And I just went to DI and got like a hand grater.
Yeah.
Like it just, for like 25 cents.
Yeah.
And I just keep it in my laundry room and I will just grate it. Or if I have the other half of the bar, if I need to like do it on a knee stain or whatever.
Okay.
Anyway, it's fantastic. It's really, really good. And it's like 99 cents for the bar.
Yeah, that's nice.
So I usually will buy them like 4 or 5 at a time.
Yeah.
Because it's not that you go through them like super fast. But anyway, there's lots of tips and tricks for our sporting attire. But I feel like that one is one that's like, it's a really, really good one.
Okay.
Okay. My very last one for today is, I've talked a lot about my Pureology shampoo and conditioner, which I love, love, love.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have a leave-in conditioner. And I swear by leave-in conditioner. I use it, you'll know, on every single client. I use it on myself. I just feel like
this is the one that you use on all your clients, or do you use
this? I both. So I use it at the salon, and I mean, I have a love for a lot of products. Yeah. So there are a lot of different ones I've used. I currently am using it at the salon, and I am currently using it here at my house.
Okay.
But I do use that one. I feel like more often than not.
Okay.
But it's called 21 Benefits. So it actually has like 21 specific items in it that are really good for your hair. A lot of times leave-in conditioners have already like a heat protectant in there along with a detangler. Oh. I mean, there's like a lot of things in there. I literally
was thinking, I should get a heat protectant. I haven't used one in years.
Yes.
But maybe I just need to get this.
Yes, because then it's all encompassing.
All in one.
Yes. So you can use because I'll sometimes put in the leave-in conditioner and then also put in a heat protectant. But you don't have to if you're using a leave-in a lot of times. Okay. I mean, you want to like check the label and make sure that one has it. But yes, a lot of them have. It's like all encompassing. So it's a really, really good one. Okay. I love it.
These are the things that I'm like not good at. Right? Like hair, makeup, fashion.
No,
like, don't ask me any of those questions.
No, you are good. You are good. I feel like you always have like really good things that you're like, oh, I use this or I use this. Like you always have good.
I appreciate finding good things, and when you do like favorite parties, or favorite things, whatever. When you go to those parties, I feel like I am bringing the things that I'm like, this one is cold, you guys, because I don't use a lot of products, or I don't love a lot a products. So when I find something, I'm like, this one is cold.
This is it, and you'll stick with it.
And I don't
forever.
use. I will stick with it forever, and I don't use a lot. Yeah. So it's like.
Yeah, it's a really, really good one. Yeah. I and I feel like I use a lot of products, and so I have a lot of
you have a lot of favorites, right?
Yes, but I agree with you. Those ones that are gold are some of my favorite things now that other people have told me about too. Yeah. So I agree with you. Sure. Okay, well then let's just get into it now.
Okay.
Let's start off with the what did you call it? Modality that you use.
Yes, lifespan integration.
Okay, so
tell us LI.
Okay, so describe what that is. Tell us a little bit about it. And obviously don't, not talking about certain clients or anything, but tell us like maybe an example of how it would be used.
Sure. So I'm happy to share my own story with it because that's always the most fresh. I know that one the best.
Yes.
And I was actually introduced to it in therapy. So I struggled a lot postpartum with all of my kids for different reasons. But it wasn't until after my last baby that, and I had found some things to help with the other ones, but whatever, for whatever reason.
Like you feel like you got postpartum after every single pregnancy?
Yeah, for different reasons. But with my oldest, it was he had some health stuff happening.
Okay.
So I feel like I did okay with him, but then his health stuff just like wrecked me, right? Like just that feeling of being the mom and being so powerless to fix this, but like you're so invested in it, right? And his sleep tanked. He was actually my one good sleeper, and it
Okay.
tanked because of
His health issues.
stuff.
Okay, interesting.
So that was hard, but when we got that fixed, like I felt really good about it. And then that's when I got pregnant with my twins. Like the first week we were trying, like just
Myrtle.
After I went back and I was like, let's not try. And we were already pregnant. So it's fine.
Gosh.
And then with the twins, it was written off because they were twins. So it was hard. So I didn't recognize the postpartum depression, rage, anxiety, any of that.
Okay.
For what it was. And it was 3 years before.
Really?
Before it was so
I mean, I know you've told me your story before,
yes. But yeah, it was 3 years, and it was such a sudden shift for me. And I happened upon it. I happened upon help. I don't know. And so it wasn't until it went away that I was like, oh, that's not normal.
Interesting.
That's not who I am. That was a big one.
Sure.
Right? So then again, I felt great. And what I've always done is as soon as I feel great, I just get pregnant again. And I don't know why I'm punishing myself like that. Because pregnancy sucked for me. They're so hard.
Yes.
They're so hard. And
because you get really sick too, right?
I get so sick. I have a pelvis condition. It's called symphysis pubic dysfunction.
Oh
the best way to describe it is imagine your pelvis is dislocated and you're carrying a bowling ball there. Like I was on crutches my last pregnancy. Like
and is it only on one side?
It's kind of.
I have never heard that before.
It's like in the middle of your groin. Like it's just both sides, and it just hurts.
Oh my gosh, I had like sciatica, and that was
I've heard. I didn't have that
gnarly. Like I felt like I couldn't ever like stretch it out, or
that one's awful too. So yeah, pregnancy was awful, and then you get into the postpartum, and then you think at that point with my last, I was like, okay, I know how to do sleep.
Yes,
I know the signs of this postpartum stuff. Like you felt prepared, but it was like almost like pretend prepared. Like you think you're prepared, but you still don't know what's coming.
But then joke's on you.
Like sleep was still hard. Like I knew all the things, and it was still hard.
It was still hard.
So like some kids just suck at sleeping, and I got those ones.
My first one that was really hard, but I like didn't know better. I didn't think. Like I didn't read the books. I didn't do all the things. But then when I had the twins, it was like, oh, I have to be like so rigid with the twins because I knew I would like lose my mind if not.
Yeah. Okay. And once the twins did start sleeping, like they slept great for me. They're actually good sleepers. And my last one isn't bad. It just, he was different than the other ones. So it's like, you're learning again how to do it or like what makes him move. So so this was postpartum with my last one, and he was born in August of 2019. I have to like closing my eyes so I can remember. And so it was the spring of 21, and I had two like things happen that really opened my eyes, and they're like, you are not doing well. Like you
spring of 21 as in like he was like a year and a half.
So this so he's like a year and a half, and I was like two things right in a row where like I just like spiraled, like not doing well. And so that was, and the thing is that I tried therapy. I'd gone to therapy before, and I don't know, guys. I'm a therapist. I love therapy. And I also like, if it's not good therapy, it's only going to help you a little bit.
Sure.
And you get what you pay for. Like that's just the truth of it.
I would agree with that.
And so both of those times I had found therapists through like my EAP program with my husband's job.
Okay.
They weren't bad. They just weren't great. And they couldn't provide me with a deeper level of healing that I needed. So at this point, I called my old boss who runs a private practice, Compassionate Connections Counseling. I'll just throw it out there. She's amazing.
Yes. You've told me about them. Yeah.
So they're super great. And I just said, I need somebody good. I don't care how much it is. I don't care where they're located. Like I will do whatever. And I think when you get to that point.
Yes. Yeah. You really are ready. You kind of hit your own rock bottom.
Yeah. 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 So I went to this therapist. She recommended somebody up in Salt Lake. So not close to me.
Yeah.
$200 a session.
Oh my gosh.
Did not care. Did not care.
Because you're like, no, I need help.
Yeah.
Okay.
I probably only saw her less than 10 sessions. Maybe 5, maybe 6, maybe 8. I don't remember.
Okay. But even then, that's like $2,000.
And it sure was worth every penny. I'll tell you that right now.
Amazing. I mean, I'm a firm believer in therapy. I've been to a lot of therapy in my
well, and a lot of people do
adult life as well.
I've never even tried to do insurance because I don't like playing the my insurance telling me who I can go to.
Yes.
I never play that game. I will always get a referral from someone. I mean, I did play that game and it didn't go well.
Sure.
So I will always get a mouth-to-mouth referral.
Yeah.
Who can I go to? Who can help me?
Yeah. And I think in that specific thing too, I think you were right to like ask those kind of questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So she saw me and we had a few sessions, however many sessions, and then she did lifespan integration. She did an LI protocol on me. And at that point, I mean, I was struggling with so many things, but we just chose the tip of the iceberg, right?
Okay.
And it happened to be like body image, like after having all the kids.
Oh, sure.
After all the things. And what I didn't know at this time was I actually had diastasis recti, which is the separation of your abs. So I 100% had that protruding belly. I looked pregnant.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Which is crazy. Because even when you told me that the first time, I was like, I've never noticed that about you though, ever.
Oh, well, that's sweet. But some people did because I got the comments. But I had checked myself and I felt like I didn't have it. And so it was something that I just was aware of all my pregnancies, but kind of missed it. And then there was so much shame around my body that I couldn't work out. I couldn't do anything. Like it just totally was blocking me. So, so she did a protocol on me. She did what they call an LI. It's called a standard protocol. And let's see, how do we explain this? What ends up happening is you start in a past memory of yourself. Oftentimes it can be a trauma memory. This one was more of like a time period. So it was just, where do you see yourself at this time? Where are you? And then your present self actually goes to your past self.
Oh, okay.
And your present self gets to, meet this past self, tell them who you are.
Interesting.
Sometimes your past self is just so grateful that you're there. And sometimes your past self is, who are you? Like, I do not trust you. Right?
Interesting.
And so there's certain things that you're going to do to like build that connection between the two of them. Your present self is going to help your past self navigate that time period, whatever they needed in this moment. Because that protocol was so long ago, I can't exactly remember how my present self helped my past self. There's more recent ones that I've done that I could tell you. And then you bring your past self to like a peaceful place. You do more connecting with them. Are you just like normal, like sittingness? Are you like under any type of like hypnosis? Like anything? It's just active imagination. You close your eyes and your therapist will guide you like what to do.
Yeah, because there's like specific things to ask probably.
Yes, there's a script basically. And as the therapist, you're going to be able to navigate that script, be flexible with it, but you're going to guide that client through it. Right.
Interesting.
And then you even bring your past self to your present day life.
Wow.
And you get to show them.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful. Like if you think about doing this with like a younger memory, like a teenage memory where you feel so insecure, you just broke up with your boyfriend. Am I ever going to be happy again? Like you're going to take that past self to like your present day life.
Yeah. And be like, look at who I am.
Look at my kids. Look at my husband. Right. And they get to meet your past self. And you get to have it's just really, really healing. And you do that thing, you do it multiple times. And each time like you go a little bit deeper in like your healing and like what you're uncovering in that moment. So again, my introduction to LI was this protocol, which is actually not usually the first protocol that you get with LI, but for whatever reason, like she did it on me, it was great. And I responded great to it. And, I had the best summer of my life after that. Like, oh my gosh. I felt so good. Yeah. 4 months.
Well, and it's interesting because like you said, you wouldn't have thought that was the issue. You didn't even like realize what the issue was.
And no, I just didn't feel like myself. And I was angry and I was grumpy and I was ragey. And like, that's not the only issue I have. Like, I don't want to paint like this is like simplistic because I think we're all complex individuals. But it just was so freeing for me, right? And so later that fall, I signed up and I took the level 1 training for lifespan. And this is I think the only time in my life, well, maybe I won't say the only time, but it was a very clear indication of a PTSD trauma response. Not from going to level 1.
Yeah, sure.
But around the same time, it was right before I went to level 1.
Okay.
And so I had, it was crazy. So when my twins were 1, my husband, I'm going to do some LDS kind of verbiage.
That's
so
fine.
If you want me to clarify, I'm happy to do that too. But
we're open to any and all religions here.
when my twins were 1, my husband was asked to serve as Young Men's president.
Okay.
And I was willing to accept that calling. It wasn't hard to accept that
Sure.
for either of us, but it was very hard to live that calling.
Interesting. Because he was gone
one of my hardest mental stages.
Sure.
So fast forward to the fall of 21 and my husband gets asked to participate in a bishopric.
Okay.
I sat in that stake president's office bawling through the entire interview.
Yeah, because you're like,
and he said, the stake president was like, you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
And I looked at my husband in that moment. I was like, one of 2 things happens. We do this and I struggle.
Yeah.
But I knew that I could find healing.
Sure.
Or we say no and it kills him. And how does he heal from something that he had to say no?
Because he wanted to.
Yeah.
He was ready to.
He's just a saint.
He's a good human.
Person. And So,
oh my gosh.
So we said yes. And I just absolutely did fall into a PTSD trauma. I couldn't function.
Okay.
I couldn't stop crying. I felt numb and dissociated from my life. It's really hard to describe.
Yeah.
But I had already signed up for this training and they asked for volunteers to participate. And I was like, hello, this is my theory. You're paying $500 to go to this training and they want to
get the most out of
it. I'll do as much therapy as I can in the training. If it can help me. So I am absolutely me. And so the facilitator calls me and she's kind of talking to me. And she says on the phone with me as I'm telling her what's going on, she says, this is over. You're in the present right now. This has happened a long time ago. And just saying that much brought me out of it to a functional state.
Really?
It didn't process anything.
Okay.
But it just reminded me that it's over.
Kind of snap out of it.
He is not in Young Men's president right now.
Sure.
That is over. Okay. Right? So it's okay, I can function. So it was so weird. And she said okay, I think it will work. It was a little bit it's not exactly what we're going for, but I think it will work. And they didn't have any other volunteers. And luckily I got chosen. Right?
That's amazing.
So I went into the training and they did another protocol on me and it was much different than the standard.
Okay.
And so this is where I really learned what LI is.
Okay.
And a lot of the foundation in LI is it takes memory cues. We'll say once a year memory cues or memory snippets, and you use a word or a small phrase to just tell you what's happening, red house or red wagon. You might have a memory where you rode in a red wagon. So you could say red wagon or, lots of whatever, right? Yeah. So many different cue examples. But they use that cue and they repeat it over and over and over again. Now, there's so many different protocols in LI depending on what you're focusing on. LI does trauma clearing, which is what that standard protocol was.
Sure.
It's what we did. This PTSD protocol is what we did in the training for me. So they have trauma clearing protocols. They have core building. Okay. Building up your core, who you are. Yeah. And then they also have attachment repair protocols. And there's so many, right? So I love LI because I feel it's
there's so many
inclusive.
Options. Yeah. Yes. You can help so many different people just the same protocol or the same, not protocol, because I know you just said there's multiples, but basically with the same.
Yes. And there's so much crossover too, right? So even if I'm doing that trauma clearing protocol, it's still hitting your core building and it's still hitting attachment repair, but it's not the main focus.
Yes.
If that makes sense. So again, we did this protocol. We use these memory snippets. And again, there's a certain script that you follow in a certain way that you're going to do it. Right.
And I won't get
into all of those details because this is not an LI training, but just know that it's different and special.
To know that you can, because there could be people out listening though, that are that's what I need, but I don't know what to ask for. And I feel that's a lot of times where people are even asking for a friend or whatever, you're okay, can I get a referral? Or who are you going to? Sometimes what they need isn't what you need, but they're this therapist changed my life. And it's but they're not going to change your life if that's not something they specialize in. Yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And if it's not something I came out of this experience because the first 2 protocols I had with LI and each time they changed my life, I felt and so I came out really, really oh my gosh, what therapy is this? And why are we not only doing this, right?
Yes.
And everyone needs this. And I think I've toned that down a little bit where I'm okay, there's lots of good therapy modalities out there. But
this one is the best.
Yeah, I love it. And I feel like it can be so beneficial, but I also like will say this about it in case anyone, whether you're doing LI or EMDR or IFS or ART, like there's lots of different, so many trauma modalities out there. But these two protocols that I got introduced to it are kind of we'll call it my mentor calls them the sexy protocols because they are so relieving.
Sure.
You see such big shifts. You walk out of them and you just, your life, you notice things. Like you can see how it's impacting you and how you feel different.
Sure.
And those are nice to have.
Oh, yeah,
like,
for
who
sure.
doesn't want to do that,
well, especially, because I think sometimes when you go into therapy, you're hoping like for a lot of change fast.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you don't get that.
Yeah. So it is nice to have that at times.
Yeah. Like I feel like there were things in my life that took me 5 years of therapy to, or like, on and off of 5 years to finally at the end be like, okay, I get it.
Yes.
Like, okay, now I'm on board with what they were telling me. Now I'm understanding the reason I reacted to certain things or whatever.
And when LA very first started, it's not a super old modality.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like huge. That's why I say EMDR is much more known.
Yeah. It's trendy. I think that's the right that was the right word to use for it.
Yeah. So LI, when it first started, they were only doing these like standard and this PTSD protocol, the sexy ones that you were really seeing these big shifts with. And what they realized is that those sexy protocols can be more effective and more efficient and easier for your system to handle.
Interesting.
If we can do some foundational work first. And those protocols, not so sexy. Not so fun. And that's a little bit
hard stuff.
That's where it gets like, okay, I can't see the direct correlation of this. Like, is this helping?
Sure.
And that stage, so we have in LA, we have different stages of therapy. Stage 1 is that foundational. Stage 2 is when you're doing more of those sexy protocols. And then stage 3 is really fun, but we won't even get into that. But
perfect.
That stage 1 is it's hard because it's a lot of trusting this process.
Sure.
And so if you do find yourself doing LA therapy, a lot of what I will hear my clients tell me in that stage 1 is they feel less reactive to things. They feel like they can handle more while staying like within their window of tolerance. Sure.
They're not reacting.
Their capacity is greater. They feel like I'm handling stress better, right? And it's really interesting because a lot of the times when people come in for therapy, I'll have them write out like, what are your goals for therapy to see kind of what they're at and what they're looking for. And almost across the board, people will put like coping mechanisms.
Interesting.
And I almost always address this in therapy because when we say like, I need more coping mechanisms, right? Because I'm not handling stress well. Sure. Because I am not living in this window of tolerance, right? And when we think of coping mechanisms, we think of things like deep breathing.
Okay.
We think of things like, taking a break, counting to 10. We think of, maybe going on a walk, exercise, right? It's a lot of doing things. And no one is coming to me and spending $150 a session.
Yes. She's worth every penny.
To tell them to count to 10.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the problem is not that you do not have coping mechanisms in your life or that you do not know what they are or that you could not Google them and make a list that you feel comfortable doing.
Sure.
The problem is that the reaction is too fast that you do not have time to slow down and implement that. And so LI actually works with your brain. It's a bottom-up approach. And it works with your brain to give you more time or more space to be able to do those things.
To cope.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah, to cope. Wow. And to apply your coping mechanisms that you already know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think, I don't even know. My therapy was not, and I'll get into that, I think, at a different time.
Sure.
But mine wasn't like necessarily how to deal with a certain situation. It was what was in my life at that time.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I don't know if I ever remember learning coping mechanisms. It was just, I had to learn, I guess, to cope with what was happening in my life, but I just had to learn basically that it was nothing that I could control.
Yes. So, and that's the difference, right? Because, you think it's more about accepting what you cannot change.
Yep, exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Letting go of the control.
Yeah, for sure.
Dealing with the anxiety that causes you.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So then let's talk about, so when that happened and you started going to the LI training, was it soon after that you decided to go back to therapy?
So it was about another year. So I did the level 1 training in the fall of 21. And then in the spring of 22, I did the level 2 training. And that's the one that taught me that very first protocol I did with my therapist, where your present self goes back to your past self, which was like my goal. Like that's what I was going to learn. And I go to that first training and I'm like, I think you missed something. Yeah.
You're all, this is not what happened to me. This is not what
I signed up for, right?
Yeah, because you didn't realize that there were multiple.
No, and she had done the training like years and years and years ago. And at that point, they really were just training in that standard protocol. And since then, they've developed and like added so much more to it. Yeah. So I went to that level 2 training and I was like, okay, now I'm ready.
Okay.
And then in the fall-ish, end of summer of 22 is when I started doing private practice. And I'm very like part-time, very part-time, right? I work right now. I have 4 clients. I work Tuesday and Thursday mornings. I love it. Like I could probably take one more client, but I was gonna say that's it. There's only 4 total. Like I don't. Yeah.
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, it's so small, and I think I've done 5. So I have 4 right now. I used to do all in one day.
Okay.
So that limited because I had to be home for kids and stuff.
Yes.
But so it's pretty small, and I'm working on certification. So I started that, the fall of 22, and then in 23, I took the level 3 and level 4 training. So I've taken all of the lifestyle integration training. That's why I say there's so much more than what I was introduced for originally.
Yeah.
And then I started the certification process. So I get consultations with the higher ups in the in the modality, and I'm doing my own lifespan. So I've been in therapy since I should say I've been in therapy with a good LI therapist since about 22, summer of 22.
Okay.
And I've switched therapists just because of things I'm not getting into, like both good, but just wanting a more pure current model of LI.
Yeah.
And so,
especially now that you know.
Yeah.
Because once you know more, then you can expect more, I think.
Right.
Because I feel like a lot of times you go into things like that, again, not knowing.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a second, this therapist is not helping me because it's not necessarily what I need.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And so that's a little bit of my beef. Like some of the therapists that I went to that weren't as helpful, I don't know.
Like maybe they were
just like talk
helpful for other people. Yes.
Yes. And that can be helpful.
100%. Yeah.
Like having someone to talk to and just like go through your things is helpful.
Yeah.
Like don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I know now that like I had some trauma that I needed to heal from. And like having said that, like, yes, my parents were divorced. I didn't grow up in like a home that was like, this validating, loving, like the home that we talk about nowadays, right? Like, I don't know that I grew up in that home, but I wasn't abused. I've never been sexually assaulted. Like, I don't have like these big T traumas. But I did have just kind of this overarching, like maybe lack of attachment and moments of hurt. In my childhood that have really affected me. So
later on. Well, and I think it is things like you said, because for so long when people talk about therapy, it was because of these big traumas. It was because you were abused or like, something like that.
That's when you went to therapy. Yes. You didn't go just because.
But it's like nowadays, no, there are so many more things to go for, even just to learn coping mechanisms for life.
Yes.
Because if you are not taught that growing up, which I do feel like my parents, not that I remember anything specific that they did, but I do feel like it was like they never, shamed my feelings or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Like I do feel like I was always able to like, no, this is how I feel, or I didn't feel like I had to like tuck them away or anything like that. But it's interesting, different things that like, oh, well, because this is how I was raised, or this is how I grew up, that like it's later caused me to like react a certain way to things that I'm like, oh, I never would have like. I don't know. Like,
well,
even the way, like, I
because-
parent, right? Where, like, my parent, I feel like they did awesome and they did, raise me very independent. But I feel like there are some things that I'm like, oh, well, I'm maybe going to let my kids be really independent, but not as independent as I was. Right?
Well, and I feel like part of it, like, you had, we'll say you had good enough parents. Were they perfect? No.
Yeah. Well,
but
and I
were they good enough, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like you had, an attachment. They were there for you. Like all of that was there. Did they make mistakes? Sure. But the piece in there that even if you have good enough parents, the reason why I think everyone benefits from therapy is because you are a child through all of this.
Yes.
You do not have the whatever you want to call it, mental, emotional, intelligent capacity to process events as an adult would.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
you can have good enough parents, and I can share probably one of the most shifting experiences that I had with LI, which demonstrates this. Like, it's not about my parents did something wrong. It's about, how did I interpret this? What was my experience in this?
Yeah.
Right. So here's a really good example of that. And another piece of LI is that it uses somatic. So it's like a body based, which is something you get into you do more in stage 2. But, I had this experience. I went to my kid's baseball game. Maybe you'll relate to this, maybe not. Cause I'm like, it just kind of blew me. So it was I don't know. It was a game, whatever. It was, I like going to my kids' games and I get invested in them and I cheer for them. The more anxious I am, the louder I cheer.
Yep, like, me too. Oh yeah.
I try not to argue with people because but I will cheer loud because that's what I can control and what I can do. And anyway, so we're at this game and this little like conflict breaks out. And I don't remember if it was between a parent and the ump or the ump and the coach, but it was like this conflict, right? Yeah. And I felt it in my body, like immediately in my stomach. I felt this pit in my stomach.
Oh my god!
I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything, but I just was there and aware of what was happening and just kind of this sick feeling. And the game carried on and we probably won. It was a good season for us. So I'm just guessing that we won. And that feeling did not go away for 24 to 48 hours. I couldn't sleep that night. The whole day, the next day, I was like, what is this? What is happening? Yeah. Right. And so I brought it into my therapist. I was like, what is going on? And we're kind of talking about it. And I'm telling her what happened. And she goes, how was conflict handled in your home growing up? And I was like, oh, probably not great. Right. So I give her a few examples that pop into your mind. Sure. And she's like, okay. And LI does this really neat thing. Again, this is a stage 2. So a little bit later on, you won't see this when you first go in, but she has me connect to that feeling that I felt at the game. Okay. She has me close my eyes and she has me just focus on that feeling and let me know what comes up. And other memories will come up. And so this memory came up of, I remember we were driving and we had one of those big old brown vans.
Yep.
Like
a club wagon. Yes, we did too. Ours was blue.
It was the 80s, early 90s, probably early 90s at this point. And we were driving home, I want to say from Salt Lake. We lived in Wyoming. We lived in Evanston. So about an hour and a half drive from Salt Lake. And the car was having problems. And this is around the time that my parents were split up. I don't know if they were divorced yet, but like there was separation there, right? Okay. And my mom pulls over and it was me and I want to say my 2 younger siblings in the car, but it might have just been one, like just my younger sister. But we pull over and my mom's like kind of looking in the car, like, now I'm just laughing about this. I'm like, what was going on? She pulls something out and like opens the car door and like puts a piece of the engine in the car.
Oh my gosh, like on the seat?
And who knows? Yeah, like just like it's wrapped up in like an old towel, and she just like sets it there because
oh my
god, we might need that later. Like I don't know, and I have no idea.
We dropped a carburetor or something.
Yes, like I have no idea. Like I don't know what happened. Sure, right? Like fell out, like whatever. Like something's wrong with this car, obviously. But as a kid, like I am like, oh my word, a piece of our engine is in our car.
Yes,
like we are doomed. Yeah, right.
Like we're never gonna get
gets back in and starts driving again.
Oh
but
my
eventually
gosh.
We don't get very far. And so eventually we have to pull over again. And she has to call my dad. And that's when I know it's serious because
she does not want to talk to
him.
Right,
because they're separated. They're going through like, not great things. So, and dad comes and he ends up towing the car. But in the meantime, while we're waiting, I am this young 8-9-year-old child and I'm just trying to be helpful. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so I pull out coloring books and crayons and just start taking care of my little sister. Sure. Here, let's color this. Like all entertaining. Like this is not trauma, you guys. Yeah. This does not sound like trauma. Why did this come up when she's having me bridge back from the Like I have no idea, right? But we decided to do that memory in a standard protocol because it was, for whatever reason, we were going to do that. But we decided to do that one. And so we go back and originally it just starts with my, my present self showing up and my younger self saying, oh, great, I can just be a kid now. I don't have to take care of anyone.
Sure.
So I just get to be a kid. And that's so nice because my present self can like be the adult in this situation and take care of my younger sister. And that's so great. And we go through this whole process and we go back again to that same memory. And okay, well, now what's going on? And we do this like 3 or 4 times. So you get a little bit deeper each time. And so forgive my memory because I can't remember exactly how it went. But throughout this process, we uncover that the reason I'm taking care of my sister, the reason I don't feel like I can be a kid in that moment is because I feel like I have to control my mom's emotions. I feel like if I don't do it right, she will freak out over the stress of the car breaking down.
Sure.
And that is my fault because I was not good enough in that moment.
Yeah.
Okay, what 8-year-old is carrying that? Like, how heavy is that?
Oh, yeah. Well, and like you said, though, it's something that you didn't even consciously like understand at that point. And you've been carrying that with you for 25 years.
So my present self is able to teach my young self.
Yeah.
And like I am teaching my younger self, but I also like my younger self has grown up with me.
Yes.
Like, you know, so like she is able to actually understand it now.
Yeah.
Whereas she may not have been able to understand it in real time.
Sure.
Right. But like, hey, you're not responsible for this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do. And my younger self legitimately was like, wait, I can do anything and I'm not responsible for the way mom responds? Well, great. Let's be crazy.
Yeah.
Great. Let's be crazy.
Yeah.
And she got to be crazy in that car and mom didn't get to get mad at her.
Yeah.
Right. So healing. So fast forward. I mean, this was in the spring, just this spring. We still had more baseball games, soccer, like all the sports.
Yes, all the things.
I have yet to have that feeling come back.
Really?
Why did it come? My theory is that in that moment when there was conflict between whoever it was, I felt responsible.
Yeah.
I have to make sure that this doesn't escalate. I have to keep these other parents from getting involved. Sure. I have to cool the coach down. I have to I am responsible for this. Am I?
Interesting.
Absolutely not. In fact, I was just at a game the other day and I watched my son's football coach getting in a fight with the fan of the other team.
Oh my gosh.
But I just got to watch it. I didn't even have to feel anything.
Yeah.
And then I was like, great, well, I'm just going to cheer for the kids because again, that's what I can do. And that's what really matters.
That's
and
what
I need to get into this.
Yeah.
But like, that was such a powerful one to me because it showed me not every experience is like a big T trauma, but it can carry these meanings.
Sure.
It's my mom didn't do anything wrong in that
moment.
It's
just that, it's just those things that you, again, shape you a little bit differently because you don't understand at that age.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then to have the like bodily response to it and then to have that like not be there. Like I had felt that so many times.
Yeah.
Like I can't tell you, like I'm pretty sure the 3 years after my twins were born, I lived with that daily, not understanding that it was there until it went away.
Yeah.
And to look back now and be like, oh my word, like I just think about like all the pressure I felt and that everything was my fault and everything was like, I had to do it all.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Oh, guys. Like,
and that's interesting because I've definitely felt things like that over the years. That it's like, like I need to control this situation.
Yeah.
Like, until I like learned essentially that it was not anything I could control.
Yes. And like that's the part, like LA is not the only way to get there or to learn that.
Sure.
But it has been like so powerful for my own healing. And then with my clients too, like so many stories and just seeing that.
Yeah.
And it's so
is that pretty much all that you do with clients now? Is this LI?
Yeah. So I just practice LI and I will just be super upfront with clients. Like if you're not interested in this or you feel like it doesn't fit, then I'm happy to provide you a referral. But this is what I do right now. I don't know if it will always be that way. Like I said, I am working towards certification in this therapy modality.
Yeah.
And the thing about therapy is like, you're constantly having to get, continuing education credits. You're continuing. Yeah. So maybe that will evolve. Maybe I'll get certified in something else. Maybe whatever. But like,
like you said, things are constantly changing.
Yeah.
It's just like where before, that therapist you went to had only really learned that level 1 or whatever. And so now it's like, there's level 4. Well, there may end up being something else that comes out. Sure. I agree with you. I feel like, and I think I had even asked you that. It seems like for like a good year or two, that's all I heard about was EMDR.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Like, and to me, I was like, well, what is that? And then when people started describing it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know if I could ever let myself give up that kind of control to even be hypnotized enough or whatever it is.
It always felt weird to me.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, I just don't know.
I never
if I could
did
ever
it.
do
I never
that.
had it done to me. So maybe I would feel differently if I had.
Yeah. That's
But even looking into the trainings, I was like, I just don't think I can invest that kind of money for something that I just
are not
can't buy
100%
into.
sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And so when you really sit down and I explain like to other clinicians, I'm happy to do it here too, but again, it may not be worth it. But like when I explain like what LI is doing and how it's working and how it's actually changing your brain, it just fit for me. It just made sense.
Yeah.
And it was actually more affordable. And so I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do.
Well, and I think too, that's just like in anything, like with hair, like I specialize in lived in color, or you know what I'm saying? Like, and there are clients who come to me that don't ever come back. And I think it's because that I'm just not for them. That's not the style that they like. And I tell people that all the time, like, it's okay if we don't fit.
Yes.
Like, I will still be your friend, even if you come to me and then don't come to me anymore. Like if we had a relationship, then of course I'm still going to be friends with you. I don't care. Like there's a million stylists out there that, go to somebody that you like better. You're paying for the service. It's just like, I choose to go to this grocery store over that grocery store because I like their product better or their produce or whatever it is. Yeah.
And I would say as a clinician, like as far as client retention, like clients that come in and try LI and then I've gone through like clients, like just like I would with anything. I can think of one client that I don't know for sure if she bought into it.
Oh, okay.
Like she only came so many times, and then when she stopped coming, you know, there was a reason that may or may not have been true. Like I'm not here to say one way or the other. I think that client sent me a referral.
Oh,
and that client that she sent me really loved it.
Yeah.
And when she had to quit, she was like, how can I keep this progress? Like, what can I do? Like, you could tell that like it had impacted her and worked for her.
Yeah.
And I would say when I have had clients who have had to stop therapy, other than that one person, it's almost always been I can't do this right now because of this.
Yeah.
But can I come back later? Or how do I keep this here? So you can tell that it's like they're seeing the effectiveness of it and it has been helpful for them. So.
Yeah, that's interesting though that client would not come back to you but would refer.
Yeah.
But
again maybe her reason was true.
I'm like
I think it was a scheduling thing. So
sure.
I don't know for sure,
but again, I think that even with doing hair, it's like, let me refer you to somebody, because there's times where people are like, this is what I want done. And I'm like, I don't really specialize in that. Yeah. Like I don't do vivid colors, or I don't really do like specialized cuts. Cause like I'm very basic in my cutting, or I specialize in lived in color. And I think that once I made those decisions and set those boundaries, it was easier for me to be like, oh no, go see so-and-so because they're amazing at just cutting. Because there are a lot of stylists who only cut and some who only do color.
Yeah.
And again, they just specialize in certain things. So
it feels freeing.
Yeah.
Like absolutely. For you, because it's like, okay, I don't have to do everything. Yeah. And I can be okay. Like,
well, and it probably helped you making the decision to go back to like doing therapy, where you're like, hey, now I know what I'm specializing in and this is what I'm enjoying. And then you enjoy being there and you enjoy doing the work.
And it's so interesting because often you ask people, well, what population do you work with? And I get that, like, who do you help with? And you see people who are like, I specialize in eating disorders, or I specialize in, something specific like that. The thing that I love about LI, like I specialize in LI and I feel comfortable treating almost anything through an LI lens.
Really?
Yes. So
like literally like an eating disorder, like really.
And I think like with some,
I mean, like, I fully believe I fully believe in you because I know that you're wicked smart. But that's just interesting to know that it's not just for certain instances.
Yes, because here's my theory. Are you ready?
Okay. Yep.
So we have the DSM, which is where we get all of our diagnosis from, right? Okay. So it's like depression, anxiety, eating disorders, a million more that I could name, right?
Okay.
Those are all symptoms. The DSM is all symptoms. We diagnose people based off of their symptoms.
Okay.
Where do symptoms come from? Their root cause. What does LI treat? Their root cause. So yes, I'm going to help these symptoms, but when I'm assessing and treatment planning and doing all of that for my clients, you're looking at that, but you're like getting to the heart of it.
Sure.
Right? And the symptoms vary from person to person.
Sure.
But the heart of the issues are often
the same.
Wow. Yeah.
That is actually like so fascinating to think about, because I mean, how many times do we talk about like addiction or eating disorder, anything like that? And And you're right. A lot of times it does come back to like whether it's abandonment issues or, you know what I'm saying? Like just so many different
and always
things.
like attachment.
Yeah.
And I did not my undergrad, I did my graduate in marriage and family therapy. Like attachment was a huge piece of like my training and what we did. But it was often only between either couples or parent-child. Because that's where it's formed, right? Parent-child is where it's formed.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you mirror that in your own marriage.
Yeah.
And other relationships too, but marriage for sure. What we didn't ever get trained on was attachment with self.
Yeah.
And really, when you leave that parent-child like attachment, if you can create, heal, bond with self, then your attachment with your partner doesn't have to mirror the attachment that you had with your parent. Right? It can be better.
Yeah.
Not like,
so
I'm saying when you come from an insecure attachment, for example.
Yes. So is that kind of when you say then like you can't love somebody else until you love yourself?
Yeah, I kind of like that.
Okay.
Stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, loving yourself. The fear that most people have is being unlovable or not being good enough.
Yeah.
We say that like, oh, I'm bad. Like these are the fears. I'm bad. I'm not good enough. Why does that even matter?
Yeah.
Because it prevents us from connecting with people. Okay. That is like our deepest natural thing. Like we all want to connect with people.
Yeah.
And so when you hear people say things like, I don't need people in my life. I just am the way that I am. Like, I'm fine. I don't need you. Like
I don't need friends.
Okay, you have a very strong protection around you.
Yes.
That's all that is.
I have a few people in my life that are like that.
That's very strong armor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't need you. I'll put you away first because if I take that off and you see and reject me, I will crumble.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think it all comes back to that. And I think, again, that comes back to that attachment repair and that core building, which you get in LI. So.
And I've told you this before. I'm just like chuckling to myself because I feel like every time you come to the salon, we have like mind-blowing conversations like this that I like go home and like, guess what I learned? Like, this is fascinating because there's a lot of things that you've like connected the dots for me that I'm like, oh my gosh, like that makes so much sense. And it's interesting though that our brains don't, because, okay, so sometimes I feel like when things happen, even with my kids, you know, I'm trying to teach them life skills or whatever. In my brain, I'm like, that is just common sense. How do you not get that?
Yeah.
But then as an adult, a 40-year-old woman, you say things and you're probably like, that is common sense, you idiot. And I'm like, no. Mind blown because it has never been maybe worded that way or, you know, and I read a lot of books, a lot of books. And I feel like I am constantly, and they're obviously like historical fiction and romance and all these things, but I feel like a lot of them do kind of put in.
They do. Books are so good. Like a good author.
Oh my gosh. Like
does a really good job of portraying this whole thing.
Yes.
Right?
Where you're like, there's some that I'm reading that I'm like, oh, I already know where this is headed. Yeah. Like, why can she not just get out of her own way? Yeah. You know, things like that. But then there are some times that I read books that I'm like, they portray a problem and then how
think about
like
the
somebody
woman.
tells them.
The woman.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You think about that girl, the main character in that book, right? And her desire to please her father.
Oh.
So much so that she signs up for war.
Yes.
And it displeases him. That
he doesn't believe her for part of it too. That she was like, I did these things. And he was like, no, you didn't. Because women didn't go to like.
Yes. And it's so interesting. Yeah. She's such a great author, right? And at the beginning of that book, she, we're talking about Kristen Hanna.
Yep. Yeah.
With the woman about Vietnam nurses. But at the beginning of the book, she doesn't like come out and just say like, I'm worried that I'm not good enough for him. I'm worried that he doesn't love me. And like, that's what makes it so good because you just relate to the insecurities of it. But then as the book evolves, like she keeps coming back to that point and you just see it so deep. Like she went to war to get her father's approval.
Yeah.
From
and all the things that happened to her through it, where essentially the book is about PTSD.
Oh yeah.
And how for so many years, no one even, do you remember? Now I can't even remember what they called it. What did they call it?
I won't.
Oh my gosh. What is it? Yeah. And like for years, like shock syndrome, something like shell shock.
Oh.
That's what PTSD is. But they called it this like shell shock, and it was
Yeah.
essentially like, oh, it's because of like the noises of the bullets and like all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. And
Do you remember like
at that time they were very much so like, just get over it. Don't think about it. Don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And then that just exacerbates your symptoms.
Yes.
And it makes it worse.
Yeah.
And so this whole idea of like, actually the way that you get over it is you do talk
through it. Yeah.
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 And you can, like I said, like the LI protocol is really, really cool in situations where there's like war, rape, anything that's like a big T trauma like that, because a lot of times like it is so hard and scary to talk about it that you just physically feel like you can't, or you will break down.
Yeah.
And with LI, there is less talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit, like I've got to make that timeline of events, but then my clients get to sit and I get to talk and repeat that timeline and walk them through it and do it. And so I think for clients that, and I've had clients where talking is hard, whether it's because they don't like to talk about the trauma or just talking is hard in general, like quiet people.
Sure.
Right? Imagine being a quiet person and you go to therapy and you have 50 minutes of, okay, what do you want to talk about? Like, that's anxiety provoking. Like, yeah. And so I love LI.
Oh, that's the, and I feel like that would really stress me out because I am like, I don't actually like quiet.
Yeah.
And so I feel like sometimes I can be a nervous chatter.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I'm like, I got to fill up this silence here, you know?
Yes. And
that is really interesting.
So it's really like LI is really fun because there's not so much pressure to just fill the space with talking or exploring. Like I do talk to my clients, and sometimes we'll do a session where we're just talking, but we often will do, okay, now we've talked for 20 minutes. Let's do a protocol for the rest of the time. Yeah. Or we'll know next time we're going to do this protocol. It's going to take the whole time.
Yeah.
Hopefully nothing traumatic has happened to you between now and then, because we're not going to talk about it. So.
Because we have a system here.
We've got things
that is interesting. Yeah, I do feel like I learn a lot by reading books, and they're always like pulling things like that into it. But I do a lot of times just think that, and I feel like this is really in a lot of life situations, sometimes you just need an outside source.
Oh, for sure.
Sometimes you just need a third party to kind of like sit down, and I don't know you and I don't know you.
Yes.
But like, okay, tell me what's happening. Okay, well, this is what I think, or this is,
and
I don't know.
And you can do that sometimes with a friend, I think. Yeah. But the difference that you get with a therapist is, I am not a therapist with my friends. Yeah. Right? They will even say like, oh, send me a bill later. And I'm like, I wasn't a therapist with you.
Yeah.
I was
just a friend.
Yes. But when I get into my office, like I turn on my therapist switch or whatever. Sure. And I am looking at things differently. I'm looking at them through a clinical perspective. And so I'm going to catch things with my clients that I'm just not looking for with my friends. We're just chatting, we're having fun. And I'm happy to be a sounding ear. I'm happy to like listen to you, but I'm not turning that switch on. Yeah. And I can't, because it's a dual relationship. Well, and
it's hard because you also don't want your friends to feel like they're being, what do they say, like being shrinked while they're like hanging out with
it's like,
you,
trust me, I'm not.
Yeah. Well, like people always say like, like,
oh no,
when I say I'm like, careful. Oh, don't look at my hair. I didn't do it good enough today. I'm like, oh my heck, I don't care. Like, I love you for you. I don't care what your hair looks like. It could be, 10 days greasy and in a ponytail.
Which
like,
we all
I do
show
not
up to
care. Yes. Like
hair, right? Like,
I do not care. Yeah. Like whatsoever, literally whatsoever. So anyway, that's really interesting. So would you, like, what advice would you give people maybe looking for a therapist? Where do you even start? Because obviously, like you said, you want to, like, referrals are kind of key. But if you don't feel like you could ask somebody, because that's also hard to be like, hey, I need some therapy. Who do I go to?
It can be really hard to ask someone, but if you can be brave. Yeah. We just talked about kids like risking things and like facing it. So if you can be brave and you can think about, like, even if I just think in my neighborhood, like, okay, who in my neighborhood do I feel safe with? Sure. Who could I just shoot a text to and say like, hey, I'm looking for a new therapist. Do you happen to know any? Okay. Yeah. Sure. And you might be surprised. Yeah. What they share. Right. Yeah. And they might say no.
Or they might be like, I have no idea.
Yeah, they might
be like, oh, I've got 75 for you. Yes. I've gone to all of them.
And they might have like such a great referral. So I do think it's worth it to like reach out to the people. And the thing is we don't always talk about our therapists. Unless you're my friend, I'll just tell you, like, I'm in therapy all the time.
Yes.
People are always asking me for referrals, regardless
sure.
of like my profession, just because I'm like, it's a part of my experience and I'm talking about it.
And that's how I feel. Like I've had cousins and friends and people in the past be like, you talk about these things that happened to you so nonchalantly. And I'm like, right, because they happened. Like, it literally was my life. So why would I like not talk about it?
Yes, that's how I feel. So yeah, just think about someone, and it might, and I really think that if you just sit with that, like something will come to you, but you gotta have a little space, a little quiet, and like someone will come to you that you could reach out to and just see what suggestions they have. So I recommend that. It's great to reach out to somebody that like you maybe want to be like. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Like if I am thinking about my neighborhood and I'm thinking about maybe some of the women that are maybe a decade older than me.
Yeah, but or like inspire you.
They're managing life well, it looks like from the outside. They may or may not be actually doing that on the inside. But
that is actually a very interesting
thing.
But
that's who I'm going to say what has worked for you, right? Yeah. What therapy have you done? Like I'm going to reach out to those people.
I feel like you're just really dropping truth bombs today.
Yeah. Well, and that's like when I reached out to my old boss, like she was someone that I really respected.
Yes. Yeah.
And I respected the therapy that she did. And I knew I wasn't going to go to her to do therapy because we have this whole like dual relationship. You can't do it. But I knew that she would know people.
Yeah.
And so I did this. Like I sat quietly and thought, who can I reach out to that can help me? Right. And that's the person that came to mind that I needed to reach out to.
Sure.
And I might have reached out to multiple people. I don't remember. I just know that was the one. And she gave me multiple options. And then from there I chose like that person to reach out to.
Yeah.
So if you have tried that and it didn't work, or that's too scary to do, then Psychology Today is a great place to go. Okay. Because you can just, that's where most therapists are putting up like their profile of who they are.
So it's just like a website that has
it's like a directory of therapists, and so they list like where they're located, what their niches or like what modalities they're doing. They talk about their pay, so if they do accept insurance or if they don't, so you kind of get an overall picture before you reach out to them. Again, I am not a huge fan of going through insurance. Yeah. I realize I would rather go to Psychology Today and like find some and see than try to go through insurance and see who they accept and then try to go look up their individual profiles. Like, that one just sounds exhausting to me.
Sure.
Having said that, I'm not even on Psychology Today. Like my caseload is so low that like it's not worth it to me. So another thing that you can do, like if you're interested in lifespan integration, you can just Google lifespan integration. You can go to their website, and almost any therapy modality is going to have like a certification process, and so they have their own directory, so you can go to their website.
This is everyone that is
so you can do that for lifespan integration. I imagine EMDR has something like that. I know IFS is really popular and a great modality, and they also have a directory.
I've actually never even heard of IFS. What is that?
Well, let me know when you want me to come back, because that is a whole nother podcast episode. Okay. But I for really
sure
cool.
want you to come back. For sure.
Just think of Inside Out, and that is the beginning of IFS. Okay. That's where it was born from, actually, the inspiration.
Really?
Yeah. So really, really cool therapy modality that I am just getting
kind of like.
Yeah, I've been to one training in that, and I've read a little bit about it, but it's a really fun one.
Wow.
And they have their own directory too. So that's another way to, like, if you know what you're interested in as far as what kind of therapy you want. So, so when people say like, oh, I hate therapy, it didn't work for me, I always want to be like, but what kind of therapy did you do? And they're like, oh, I don't know.
Because I'm like,
I bet you did like, you just did something that like not every therapist. I always say finding a good therapist is like finding the perfect pair of jeans. Sure. You might have to try a few on. Yeah. You might have to figure out like, what do I like a little bit? Yeah. And I realize it's an investment. It's hard, but I guess I'm also at that stage in my life where I'm like, I'm willing to invest in not just my mental and emotional health, but like physical health as well.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
I'm just ready to feel better.
Yeah. Well, and this is my thing too, is I feel like a lot of people are like, life is so short. It is so short, but it's also so long.
It's so long to live with pain.
Yes. And I often think like, I mean, I'm 40 and that went by like that. But also when I look at like living for another 40 years, I'm like, oh, that is a long time. When you look at like, I've lived a lot in 40 years. And so, it's, I mean, start now, 100%. Like get get healthy, be better. And I'm sure that there's a lot of things that I do still have issues with, but I do feel like for the most part, it has changed, like, kind of like you said, just that that's not my fault. This is not something I can control. If this person does this, that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with them. It's their choice. You know, we all have, even if you don't want to look at it, I think like on a religious spectrum of like, we all have our own agency though. Yeah. Like we all can make our own decisions and how we react to things. But the only person that can control that is ourselves.
Yeah, I literally in therapy this last week, I just did a protocol around it feeling like it is all my fault.
Yeah.
And then kind of going through that process of, okay, it's not always all my fault.
Yes.
And it's actually really complex. And there's a lot of people responsible or involved. And like, yeah, just hearing you talk about that, I'm like, yeah, like it's.
Yeah. And I will one day, I think, get into, I feel like there's some people that are also involved that I would need to get there like okay with just to make sure. Yeah. I think that they would, but yeah, because I feel like that would actually, maybe that's when I'll have you on, is I'll talk to my people and make sure, and then we can kind of do a little deep dive, because
that'd be fun.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a good one. But I am a firm believer, and actually, so I told Marietta, but this morning too, because yesterday my husband Aaron was like, oh, who are you having on tomorrow? And I'm like, oh, it's my friend Marietta. She's a therapist. And anyway, he was like, you make sure to tell her that I am a firm believer in therapy. So even my husband, who doesn't really love people and doesn't really care to have friends. No, he loves people. He talks to people all day, every day, but he is very much an extroverted introvert. Yeah. Yeah. Like he needs quiet time to recharge, and he just wants to be home. And I am an extrovert.
You are.
Full through and through. And so,
but you are also, so one of the differences between extrovert and introvert is extroverts can really do surface level conversation for a long time.
Yeah.
And feel really great with that.
Yeah.
And introverts cannot.
Yeah.
Like I can't, I will be exhausted and I'll be like, I have to go because this is not serving me.
Yes, totally.
But you have the ability to do both. Like, I know that you can do that, but like, we don't ever do that when I come in, because I don't go there, but you can still go deep with me. So that's really good.
And I feel like that's why we do have such good conversation though when you come. But I don't know how I came this way. I mean, this is just who it is. But I actually am recharged by talking.
Yes.
And that's where like this, because I have had a few people that I've been like, I want you on the podcast. And they're like, no. Again, I've told you about my husband, but other people too, that are like, that is just not, like, I will talk with you one-on-one, but it's not something that I feel like I would want to, you know, open up. And I mean, not that I have that many people that listen, but yet, but for me, this like fills my cup every time I get to do this. Like I said, it's like having a play date. It's like, this is totally my element.
And how fun that you get to like schedule that self-care.
Yes.
Like every week, right?
I know. Yep. Yeah. And I have been doing it every single week, and I get excited about it, and all the things. Okay. Would you say any other advice then before we,
for finding a therapist, or
just like, just life in general? Like just, I mean, obviously you just gave a little bit of like, it's worth it to be happy for the rest of your life.
Okay. So I'm going to just say, this has just been on my mind recently.
Okay.
With like social media.
Yeah.
One, turn it off. I'm just gonna tell everybody that right now.
Okay.
Just turn it off. It will help your mental health more than you know. Secondly, something that I like to do, and I don't mean this in like a rude way or judgmental way.
Yeah.
But we so often, it's so easy, especially with social media, to see people's highlight reel.
Yes.
And then we immediately say like, oh my gosh, they have their life together. Like, this is my favorite example. Like, oh my gosh, she posted about working out. She must work out every day.
Yeah.
And like, really, like, she posted because she literally never works out.
Yeah.
And like,
that was like posted. The first time that
yes. And so what I will do just to keep myself in check is I will kind of create stories about people. Again, not in a negative way or like, this is not true at all, but just to help to check myself, because being a therapist, I think, has helped me see like, truly no one's life is perfect. Everyone is dealing with stuff. And so if I see someone, I don't know, I could just see something and I'll be like, wow, that looks like so great.
Yeah.
And then I will just make up a little story in my mind about maybe what isn't so great in their life or the hard things that they're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
And then it helps me to be so much more happier for this good thing that they have that maybe I don't have.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
But then also just it creates that person as like a really real whole person that has good and bad, and like I get to see both. Even though like I'm making this up and like the bad that I'm making up is not real, right?
It's not real. Yeah.
But it just allows me to, I don't know, compare less and love more.
Yeah.
And have greater joy for those things and not make it about me, I guess. So,
well, and I think
totally
too,
random. I don't know why
but
I
I've also
that,
heard, because I talked to, if you remember, my friend Emily that was on, the academic advisor from BYU.
Yes, I really liked that one.
I love
That one
her.
was really
your guy, you got to come on again.
And you
she
guys
is
talked
going
about
how to be a good friend.
Yes, and I found that conversation so interesting.
And so, but I feel like from that, we kind of like, I want to say we just like briefly talked about it, but she brought up when I was talking about my favorite things, and I would never have thought about this before, that she said, you choosing 5 favorite things every single week is really showing gratitude. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Yeah. Again, I never would have thought about that.
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes I'm not 100% on this, but I feel like if I do see things on social media that I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I could do that, I have to kind of check myself of, okay, but what am I grateful for?
Yes.
What are the things in my life that I get to do or that I have done that somebody else maybe not had, like, or hasn't had a chance to do? Or, you know, like, oh, I'm, you know, they're doing this, that, or the other, but like, gosh, I'm so lucky that I get to only work part-time, that I get to, I don't know, certain things, right? Where
you're just checking yourself. Checking yourself.
It's like almost like a gratitude journal every day, right? Where like then you remember the good things in your life.
And it's indicative of your values, right?
Sure.
Like, I have a friend who travels a lot and it always looks so dreamy.
Yeah.
Right? But like, also I'm like, well, I just don't actually want to do that.
That's me. I'm like, I actually like to sleep in my own bed.
Like, I like to travel sometimes, but like, I cannot go on the amount of trips that she goes on.
I actually feel the
same
way.
She gets a lot of like flack for that. Like, oh yeah, you're always gone. And like, just these negative comments that I get it. Cause like, again, it's that social media piece, but I'm really close with her and I know the other side. I'm the truthful other side. Right. And I just think, oh, if these people could just, you know, make this little story up and realize that that is the good thing that she gets to share and be okay that her life is not perfect and there's a lot of hard things that she's going through too. Right.
Well, and I think that's where we always say that the quote or whatever, the saying of, to be a fly on the wall in somebody else's life.
Yeah.
You know, that you're like, you actually have no idea, or I don't know.
And that is literally my dream, to be a fly on the wall. Yes! Like, that is why I do what I do, because I am here for the details. Like, I am invested in all of my clients' lives for their stories, past, present, future. Like, I am here for it, and I am not scared of the really hard stuff.
Yeah. Which makes you such a good therapist.
Yeah. That's why I read all the sad books. And all my friends are like, we can't read any more of yours. I'm like, oh, okay, but I love it. I know.
But, and I'm okay too. I can do some. There's some that I'm like, that's too much. I like rainbows and butterflies. But for the most part,
read it.
But again, you kind of like, I don't know. Again, you just take it back to like, wow, that's such a hard thing that they had to go to. I'm so glad I didn't have to go through that.
Yeah.
You know, but they went through it and I can learn something from it.
Yes.
So it's just interesting. Well, thank you very, very much. I hope that you got everything out that you wanted to talk about.
Good. I feel like it was long.
No, I know. I'm like, no, this is,
there you go.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we are. We're at a good amount of time here. No, thank you. We will have you on again because I do want to like touch on other things like in the future.
But, I love talking therapy. So.
Well, we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for coming.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.